Sold. $1. The hammer cracked against the block like a pistol shot. Silence followed. No clapping. Just the moan of a wind that tasted of dry sage and distant ash. She didn't lift her head. Her boots hit the ground hard, ankles raw with rope burns, dress torn at the hem, blood crusted beneath one fingernail. Her hair hung in a thick, matted braid that looked more like a noose than anything womanly. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Well then, Mr. Bix, she's yours." Harlan didn't speak, just nodded once, low beneath the brim of his weather-warped hat, and reached into his vest for a single folded note. He placed it on the block like it was made of bone. No one moved. No one ever saw Harlan Bix buy a thing he didn't intend to bury. She glanced sideways, just once. Her eyes were black glass, unreadable. She swayed like a fence post in wind, too proud to fall. He turned and walked away. She followed. Out on the main street, the sun clawed down like it meant to flay them both alive. Sand stirred with every footstep, scratching along storefront windows like a warning. The townsfolk watched from their porches, their curtains, their saloon shadows. "Man buys a girl for $1, muttered the blacksmith, spitting into the dust. "Can't mean nothing good." A woman in a second-floor window made the sign of the cross. Still, the rancher and the girl walked in silence. Footsteps matched. The mule tied to the post outside the saloon brayed once and went quiet as they passed. By the time they reached the edge of dead brush, the girl's lips were bleeding from the dry wind. She stopped. He stopped. A hawk circled above them, once, twice. She licked her lips and whispered it so soft the sand nearly stole it. "Please, just make it quick." He didn't answer, just raised a hand, not in threat, but like he was pointing out the wind's direction. She frowned, then saw it, tied to the hitch outside the mercantile. A horse, saddled, watered, waiting for her. She blinked, confused. He said nothing, only turned and climbed into the seat of his wagon. She stood frozen, the wind tugging at her sleeves like a ghost trying to pull her back. A long minute passed before she moved toward the horse. Her fingers shook as they brushed its mane. She glanced back. Harlan was already facing the trail, reins in hand. She mounted. The horse turned on instinct. They rode into the desert without a word. Two shadows growing longer with every mile. The rifle slammed into her hands before the hoofbeats even reached the porch. 5 riders. No colors. No flags. Just dust, leather, and a low rattle of spurs. She pressed her back to the splintered wall of the cabin, sighted over the barrel. Harlan stood in the doorway behind her, unmoved, as if the approaching thunder meant nothing at all. "They ain't stopping," she muttered. He didn't reply. The lead rider peeled off from the others, galloped ahead, then yanked his reins hard, sending up a wall of grit as he slid to a halt 20 yards out. His hat was tilted low, his grin was bone white. "Well now," the man called. "Ain't this a pretty picture?" The others fanned out slowly, circling the front of the ranch. One had a scar down the side of his neck. Another had a woman's ring on a chain around his wrist. None of them blinked. She stepped forward, rifle steady. The man smiled wider. "Didn't think you'd run this far, darlin', but I reckon you're out of road." No response. "Let's keep it simple. You come with us quiet, we let the old man be." She exhaled slow. Then louder, "You ain't got the rope." He laughed. "You always did talk big when you was cornered." Behind her, Harlan moved. Just one step. The floor creaked beneath his boot. The rider's eyes flicked toward him. "You the owner of this fine piece of dirt?" Harlan said nothing. "Name's Judd Calder," the man went on. "You probably heard of me. Or maybe you heard what we do to folks who shelter thieves." Silence. Harlan walked past her now, down the 2 steps of the porch, out into the sun. He stared at Calder like a man looking at an old photograph, something faded, something rotten. Then finally, words. "She ain't yours." The other riders leaned forward in their saddles. Calder's grin slipped an inch. "She was paid for," Harlan said. $1. And that dollar bought her silence from you." Calder spat. "That ain't how it works." The woman stepped down beside Harlan, lifting the rifle again. "No," she said. "But this is—" Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then, gunshot. The scar-necked rider dropped off his horse sideways, dead before he hit the ground. In a blur, she had already shifted, firing again. A second man clutched his chest and screamed. Horses bucked. Dust exploded upward. Harlan moved with terrifying calm, pulled his revolver from behind his coat like drawing breath, fired once, twice, took a bullet in the arm, didn't flinch. Calder wheeled his horse and kicked hard, racing toward the canyon. The wind screamed louder. The girl reloaded. Harlan bled quietly. Neither of them looked away. The wind shifted, and with it, hoofbeats. She dropped the kettle where it hissed against the coals and reached for the repeater. Harlan was already outside, one sleeve soaked in dry blood, hammering the barn door shut with his good arm. "They're back," she said, rifle barrel already rising. He didn't answer. Across the ridge, 5 shapes moved like ghosts through dusk, one riding high at the front with a fresh bandage wrapped across his ribs. Judd Calder. No more smiles. No more talk. Only grit in his teeth and a fresh hate behind his eyes. The riders halted 20 yards out. Sunlight died behind them, throwing long shadows across the ranch. "I said I'd come back," Calder shouted. "And this time, we're going to burn it down with you in it." She stepped beside Harlan. The sky cracked above them, thunder without rain. The rifle in her hands felt heavier than it had yesterday. Or maybe it just knew what was coming. "5 left," she whispered. "Too many," he grunted. "You sure?" He looked at her. "No." A long silence. Then, sudden movement. Calder raised his hand. The others split formation, 3 left, 1 right. Calder straight down the middle like a bullet through the heart of it all. They came hard and fast. Gunfire snapped like bone. She dropped the leftmost rider with 2 clean shots, one to the chest, one to the throat. The second slammed into the fence and rolled. The third fired wild, catching the barn wall, missing them by inches. Harlan took one knee, reloading with his one good hand, moving like he'd done this in a dozen wars. Then came Calder. He rode straight through the fence, leapt off the horse before it stopped, rolled, came up firing. The girl dove to the side, bullets chewing the porch post to splinters. Harlan stood tall, a single shot booming from his revolver. Calder's gun flew from his hand. He didn't scream, just charged. The girl lunged, rifle swinging like a club. They collided, crashed through the porch rail in a tangle of limbs and curses. She was fast, but Calder was mean. He slammed her into the dirt, hand on her throat. "I should have buried you with the others," he hissed. She jammed a knife up between his ribs. He stiffened. She rolled him off, coughing, staggered back to her feet, blood on her cheek, mud in her mouth, eyes like cold fire. Harlan stood over Calder's body, guns still raised, not blinking. The ranch was quiet now. Only the wind and the smell of gun smoke remained. Then came the first raindrop. The shovel hit rock. Sparks flew. She didn't flinch, just shifted her grip and dug deeper. 5 graves. 5 bodies. 1 silent morning. Harlan knelt at the last hole, lowering Judd Calder in with a rope and a busted shoulder. The blood had dried black along his sleeve, but he hadn't spoken a word about it. Not once. She watched him. When the last pile of dirt was patted down, she placed the man's revolver on the mound. Not as tribute, just as punctuation. Thunder still grumbled somewhere far off, but the sky had cleared. All that remained was the hush that follows a storm. She sat on the porch, eyes following the horizon. Her voice came quiet. "You knew who he was." Harlan stood in the doorway, hand braced against the frame. "I did." She looked down at her boots, then up at him again. "You were Union?" His nod was slow. "Execution detail." Her jaw tightened. "So that's why you paid the $1. "I wasn't buying you," he said. "I was buying time." She blinked at that. Harlan stepped down onto the porch, sat beside her with a grunt. A long moment passed. "He killed my husband," she said. "Outside Carbondale. Left him with the others. Said I'd be next, but he wanted to watch me suffer first. He didn't ask for more. Didn't need to. Thought if I made it far enough," she added, "the past wouldn't find me." He nodded toward the dirt road. It did. Silence again. Only the wind in the pines. She stood, wiped her hands, turned toward the barn. "My horse still saddled?" He looked at her like he was memorizing the shape of her shadow. "It is." She paused at the gate. "I ain't staying. I know. I won't come back. I don't expect you to." She reached into her coat and pulled out something small, stepped back onto the porch, placed it in his palm. A single, worn dollar bill. "For the kindness." Harlan looked down at it. fingers trembling. "You keep it," he said. "No," she replied. "You earned it." Then she was gone, hooves echoing into the canyon until the sound was swallowed by stone. They say the woman disappeared across the border. Some claim she hunts war criminals. Others say she was never real to begin with, just a ghost in borrowed boots. And Harlan? He never spoke of her again. But if you ever find your way past dead brush, out where the dust don't settle and the wind sounds like whispering prayers, you'll see an old ranch still standing. And sometimes, if the rain's just right, you'll swear you see a man sitting on the porch, holding $1 and smiling.